Good evening.
Everywhere I go on this island, it seems to me I find degeneracy.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes. See, it's a lot scarier when there's no motive, Sid.
We have a bargain.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes.
Do you feel the pain? Always fear. Pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes.
His entire work consists of violence, all the time. Obsessed with the issue of violence. Mayhem, gouging out of eyes, autopsies on the stage.
Come. It is time to keep your appointment.
Good evening, all. Welcome to episode 109 of Double Feature Horror Show. How are you all doing? Good to see regulars in the chat are back. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you managed to do your prep. And I'll also just take a moment here to say a big hi to the Alabaster. You had your 1 year anniversary as a member of this channel, and I didn't actually get notified about that. YouTube shoved that into a weird area that I only discovered when we're like two hours into the stream. And so I didn't get to say hi back. So this is a very delayed happy birthday, happy stream birthday, happy membership birthday to the Alabaster. And sorry I couldn't do it last week. Anyway, I hope you are all fine. See a couple of new faces as well, folks. If you are new, if this is the first stream you are catching, do say hi. It's always nice to see that. And I'm just going to say for this one, we're going to be a little odd. We're going to be a little off-brand in just a minor way. I am going to implore, to beg, if you have not done your horror homework, no one will be offended if you bounce. No one will be offended in the least. We want you to see Triangle unspoiled. Well, I do. I don't know. Harry and TCG might just,
We won't be offended, but we will be mightily disappointed.
This is a film that you should see unspoiled, right?
Certainly worked better for me that way.
Excellent. Yes, I told my wonderful guest and co-host, go in blind, see absolutely nothing. I put that instruction out as well, so I hope you all watched it blind and got to experience the wonderful head trip, absolutely unspoiled. I've seen, April Ethereal, trippy is a very good description. Absolutely.
I will say I did as instructed, but unfortunately I couldn't see anything.
Instructions unclear, etc. Well. I'm looking forward to hearing the thoughts. There's been some good feedback, and I'm really excited about this. But before we get any further, of course, we don't want to be rude. We're going to introduce our guest. We're going to be welcoming back returning guest Harry. How you doing, Harry?
Hello. Thank you very much for having me back. It's a pleasure, as always, to be here. I'm feeling good. I enjoyed the film very much, not to spoil anything. Although I will say that you kept selling me to this as some Lynch-esque film that you were excited to hear my take on because, I'm big into Lynch. While this film was a bit more twisty-turny than I was expecting, I will say it was nowhere near as abstract and obscure as some of Lynch's work. This certainly wasn't anything like Inland Empire.
No. But that's very fair. I thought I'd go with the Lynch thing because some of the techniques you use to understand Lynch, I think, work here. Although I've got a take on this. Other people might disagree, but my take I get from using the Lynch approach, which we'll probably detail later. But I definitely thought this is a kind of film where I want someone who is good going into the analysis, happy working in the abstract.
There is certainly plenty to analyze here because I was honestly shocked by the time the film got to the ending, just how clear part of it was in terms of the actual linear mechanics of the plot structure. in terms of what was going on. I thought that by the end it made it relatively clear, although I will say, I don't know if it's cheating or not. I did look up some stuff earlier on today, and there was certainly some things that I missed in terms of what was going on behind the scenes, what you don't explicitly see. But beyond that, I think there is a lot to analyze regarding the psychology of what the film is putting forward and what it's trying to say, or what it's trying to allow you to intuit.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to your thoughts. But of course, it would not be a double feature horror show stream without my regular, loyal co-host. He is the peanut butter to my jelly. He is the Union flag to my Britain. He is the Sean Paul to my basically every song released in 2005. It's your boy, TCG.
I was really struggling to think what song that was until you said that last bit. And then I realised you weren't doing one, or were you doing one? Oh, please.
No, I wasn't.
Okay, thank God. Yes, no, pleasure to be here as always. Thank you very much for having me. This was a good film. I like the fact that they had an autistic child in it. Although I will question the choice of haircut. I feel like that seems to be the kind of...
It certainly gave me a character to relate to.
It was a bit of a mean haircut, wasn't it? You know?
It was brutal.
Like, how are we going to communicate to the audience that this is an autistic child? And they couldn't just show him subscribing to this channel or AA. They had to go for the haircut.
Exactly.
It's not the worst thing that happens to the kid in the film, though, is it?
I don't know.
It reminded me of Village of the Damned hair as well, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Can I just say, if there's any Chelsea fans in the chat tonight, or if you're a Chelsea fan, Harry, I don't know who you support, you are 1-0 down to Man United.
I'm sorry, I'm not much of a football-y person.
Probably good for you then, my friend.
I like to lift heavy weights up and down, and also Josh and I from work have started to punch each other in the face on some week evenings, but that's about it. As far as although a few weeks ago I did go to a friend's house and watch the UFC, which was very entertaining.
Oh, which one was that? I'm derailing.
Don't ask me to remember.
I'm gonna. If there's one thing I'm good for with this chat, it's derailing streams.
Oh, we love it. It keeps it balanced, you know, TCG. It brings balance to the farce.
If we're making comparisons with the child's hair, though, it did somewhat remind me of early Iron Maiden Bruce Dickinson, not in terms of it being long, but the fact that he had a very floppy, terrible-looking fringe. I love Iron Maiden. Bruce Dickinson seems like a right nice guy, but his hair at points in his career has been absolutely terrible.
Oh, couldn't comment. I forget, you are our resident metal expert as well.
That I am. I over the weekend experimented with putting up tier lists of particular albums from bands that I like, and I did a full-blown one for Avenged Sevenfold, and I think I might do it again. I'm going to do it again this weekend.
We do have an important question. Krav Maga. Do you do Krav Maga to demonstrate any particular favour?
It's honestly, I've heard it referenced a number of times. I've heard the words. I know the syllables put together mean something. I don't know what that is, though. Josh and I have been doing a bit of boxing on the side. I've not been for a few weeks, though, because I've been off work, been on holiday. I went to the Lake District. Lovely time. Had some character development. I watched all of the Scream films and was immensely disappointed by the 6th one, as was Proper Horror Show. And I will be planning on going back to there again next week. Because it's good fun, it's good exercise, and also getting a clock in the jaw from one of your colleagues is a bit of an eye-opener.
Wakes you up, doesn't it?
That it does.
Excellent. All right, folks. Well, there's a heck of a lot we could say about Triangle. I realised in the course of prepping for this that actually I can go so deep on this. This has to get a dedicated video on one aspect of it. So I can mention that aspect here, but I'm going to try and not let it derail the stream. And I know Harry and TCG will keep me in line if I start going way too deep on that one. But just a few details about this, the production, if you're interested. Of course, this is part of our Christopher Smith season. Christopher Smith, a Bristol-born director who's still got the accent, which is lovely to hear. And this is his 3rd film. But it's also one that he wanted to make basically from the very start. He was out in Cannes shopping creep in 2004, and who knows what he'd been imbibing, but he said that he just basically got hit with a wave of inspiration for this film. He was hit with the imagery of someone being on a boat, looking up at a larger boat and realizing that they were looking back upon themselves. And he just got that imagery in his head, which I thought was pretty Lynchian, you know, the way David Lynch would just get some imagery flashing into his head, and he'd start building the film around that without being 100% on what that imagery was, where it was coming from, and he could work it out as he went.
Yes, you catch the big fish.
There's always a bigger fish, as I'm told. What's you catch the big fish from? That's not ringing a bell. Is that a way he describes it?
That's how Lynch describes his creative process, is that you've got a hook out there in the middle of the water and the ideas are swimming around like fish, and when you know that you've got something is when you catch the big fish.
I like that.
It's a very intuitive method of creation, but I do think it's quite descriptive of how most people, certainly as a musician, for me, what I do is I'll hear a riff or a melody in my head and I'll write a song around that, figure out ways to get to it. And I hear directors often talk about that as well. You get the one scene in your head that sets everything else off, and the true artistry of it is figuring out how to make it sense, getting to that one part that you thought of to begin with.
Extremely relatable, not just
like that.
filmmakers, but weirdos like me get ideas and hooks, and we have to build them in. With Lynch, I remember one was it Blue Velvet? He had the idea of finding an ear in the field, and then he explored it and he realized that the ear is effectively like a window to the mind, I think is how he described that.
I've not heard that interview, but it does sound very much like his way of thinking. I know that he also had for that particular film, he had the idea of finding the naked, bruised woman wandering the streets, because that's something that happened actually to him when he was a child. He was out with his friends at night and just found a naked, bruised woman walking down the street. Very true, very true.
Yeah, that was an interesting bit to read. I do have a Lynch semi-biography here. Of course, he doesn't write a straightforward biography. He had someone write a biography of him, and then he comments on that biography. But I will not get derailed with it. I will do a minor derailing actually at this point. Actually, no, let's finish with the production. Then we'll shill, and we'll beg you to absolutely cane that like's head in with either an axe or what appeared to be a large crowbar. You can also just shoot that like button through the chest while it begs you to not do that.
Drown that like button.
Yes. And if you haven't subscribed
push already, that like button against the protruding bit from protruding object and smash its skull, pierce it.
Oh, you love it, yeah. And if you're not subscribed, just you can slap that subscribe button into shape while it's screaming, and then you can just loop back and do it all over again. But before we get into shilling that stuff, I finished the production history. So Christopher Smith, the guy we're super interested in, we're doing a whole season. We are going to do another arc on him because we've only done 3 of his films, and by jingo, I want to do more. He's in Cannes. He gets this idea, this image, this thought of having the person on the boat seeing themselves from a distance, imagery that he's worked into the film multiple times. And he starts trying to write it. He's taking about 4 years to write it, to refine it. He said he did about 24 drafts of the story on his director's commentary. In the meantime, though, he does have to get some money coming in, so he makes Severance. We've said previously, and this has been backed up by the audio commentary on Triangle on the Blu-ray, Creep and Severance were genre pictures. They were films he could make cheap and he could sell. And it's quite interesting to hear him talk in such a business-like fashion about it. Our go-to thesis has been that he's been making, in a Roger Corman-style fashion, cheap horror movies that fit a genre convention that you could sell widely. Early stuff in the career. but he built on that, and he made them more than just subgenre pictures. We've been talking about these subtleties, these ambiguities, these lovely character moments that he's built in. But Triangle is the one that is breaking the mold. This is the one that he was really inspired by, and I think it really shows. This is not something he did to make it commercial at all. He was very happy to take a gamble with this one. And it being his third film, he had a little more say in it. He was being patient with it. He was taking his time. He got a slightly higher budget this time, only $2 million extra. Actually, let me just confirm. Yeah, $2 million extra on top of what he did for Severance, which was $10 million. I don't think it shows up massively, but it doesn't look cheap, which is nice. But he's getting a bit of leeway, and he's still getting to be creative. He saved a bit of money by filming on an actual ship in places, but a lot of the stuff he's doing is just a set that was built on a pier so that he didn't have to use green screen, which is a very welcome choice. It would have been an absolute pain in the butt to just be noticing green screen throughout the movie. And I think if we're going to have a tiny criticism, sometimes the CGI isn't flawlessly integrated, but this is 2009 here, so we're not going to be too harsh. It didn't do great at the box office, I'm afraid. It pulled in about 1.6 million. And he had an interview on the Filmmakers podcast with a couple of guys, and he talked in a kind of interesting, relaxed way, like he sort of accepted it, that it had flopped, and he's now very chill about it. And at the time, he was expecting this would be his big breakaway $100 million hit. And when it didn't happen, he took that as a bit of an attack on the ego, but then he managed to accept it. He compared his response to this to how Ridley Scott felt about the Duelists. Duelists. I pronounced that terribly. He also expected that to break the world, be an absolute box office record setter, and then realised that actually, no, it's a passion project. You get lucky with this stuff or you don't. And it's quite nice to hear him speak in such a mature way about it. But this did open doors for him. You know, he did move up, and the next film he would make was the far bigger Black Death, starring David Warner and a certain Sean Bean. But I think we'll probably cover that at a later time. I know a bunch of people, when I said I was covering Christopher Smith, said, please do Black Death. We will, but possibly there's going to be a little break. That's sort of enough of the production history. The only other thing I'd add to this, on the old Rotten Tomatoes, it scored about equal with Severance from the audience, but critics really loved it. 80% fresh from critics for once. We're agreeing with critics on this one. How do you feel about those scores, guys? 80% critics, 66% audience.
I'd say the critics were probably more on board. If I'm completely honest, I really enjoyed this film.
Yeah,
in all its 360p glory, I might add.
Oof.
360p?
Yeah.
Where did you watch? Well, I'll leave that to you. I watched it on Amazon Prime with ads, and the ads never popped up, happily, so that's all right by me. I think the audience is probably wrong on this, on Rotten Tomatoes. I can understand... the thing is, I agree more with the critics, but I can understand why each fell the way it does, because this has a bit of a twisty, windy plot, the kind of thing that if you think that you get the first time you watch, you probably think to yourself, I'm pretty clever, I am. And to be fair, the three of us, I'd like to think we are pretty clever. So this is more on our own snobbishness here. But that's the kind of thing that tends to appeal to critics, something that they can watch and go, yes, I understood that, I'm very smart. Whereas audiences, I find, general audiences, tend to be very mixed on those kinds of films. If they go in, and to be fair, the kind of imagery that seems to have been advertising this film, the posters that I've seen, paints it as a much more straightforward thriller than it actually was. And I think when people go in with those kinds of expectations and get something a bit more cerebral, like this one, it really sets them up to fail and makes them annoyed when they don't get that.
you know, you mentioned the posters. I thought I'd just get that up quickly. So Tenet ripped this off, right?
Oh yeah, you're right.
Folks, if you don't know it, you can Google the Tenet poster. It's just like this. And if you're saying like, oh, Chloe, no, that's a late redesign. They always redesign posters. This is the cover of the 2011 DVD pressing. Yes, I'm that nerdy.
In terms of the composition, this is 1-for-1.
Can I just ask now, like, are you guys both on the Tenet hate train?
I've not watched a Christopher Nolan film since what was the Interstellar? That was the one, because
yeah.
I'm sick. You know, this is coming from somebody who enjoys films like this and Lynch and films like the one that you covered. Oh my God, Possession. I like films that could broadly be described as pretentious, but I'm sick of Christopher Nolan's overly pretentious, wordy films where everything is the most pretentious it could be, yet at the same time the most boring it could be. So I just fell off of his films for a long time.
I just haven't seen Tenet. I just haven't seen it.
I can't recommend it. I can't at all. It's the one where I did do a video on it a while ago. It's the one where the director wasn't reined in a bit, and he just terrible. Anyway, we will not turn this into a Tenet hating stream.
Sorry, I just want to. In the same way, you can only write a character as clever as you are. You can only write a script as clever as you are as well.
True. And I think here's our boy Christopher Smith here. I just thought I'd show him. He's started to get his little bit grey hairs in there, which it's a cute little detail at this point, you know. Man's working hard and he's got his first salt and pepper. Random detail there. TCG, what do you think this core audience is unaware?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so. I kind of initially expected it to be sort of like a run-of-the-mill, because I think when I messaged you guys as I was watching it, I compared it to a PS5 game or PS4 game that came out a couple of years back called Man of Medan. Yeah,
I thought the exact same thing. I watched years ago. Was it Markiplier when it first came out? I watched his playthrough of it, and that game is like this film if it took 30 benzos, washed them down with a load of liquor, and then repeatedly cracked its head against a toilet seat.
Nice.
It's such a stupid game. Every character, every decision that you can make in that game is the stupidest decision in that the character could make in a situation. It was hilarious and infuriating to watch, and Markiplier playing through it absolutely lost his mind trying to understand what on earth was going on.
Yeah,
it really does copy a lot of the structure of this. A bunch of friends meet up on a dock. They go for a sail instead of a storm. They get caught by pirates, but then a big mysterious ghost ship shows up that's empty and seems to have weird things going on, and they all end up on that. But everybody just acts as though, like I say, they've just downed an entire bottle of Jack Daniels.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen a mention here. A few people have mentioned comparisons for this here. So Dead Calm. Dead Calm is explicitly referenced in the director's commentary. So is Dead of Night, a film we all love here. And actually, I think that was the first time we had you on, Harry, was Dead of Night.
No, Lost Highway was. Dead of Night
Lost
was
Highway.
Second time.
Oh, there we go. And was it Mergu mentioned? Oh, you said someone said Memento plus
The Shining.
Shining plus
Memento
Ghost
plus The
Ship, I think it was.
Shining, and what was the other one? I'm just looking for it now.
Where'd it go?
No,
I think it was Ghost Ship plus Shining plus Memento.
that's it. Oh, by the way, can I say, if you haven't seen Ghost Ship, I mean, this is me remembering it from being a teenager. I have not seen it since, but I had fond memories of Ghost Ship. It seems pretty forgotten. That was a bit of a hoot.
I've never heard of it.
No,
I've also never watched Dead Calm either, and not heard of that.
Oh, recommend it. I think yes. Well, that we could definitely watch that another time. Yes. So before we go further, We'll take a little shill break because I meant to do that earlier. Then we'll do the synopsis because I really that's going to be the last warning, so you can get out unspoiled. We do not want to spoil this movie for you. So last time I say it. So Harry or TCG, does one of you feel up to doing the? Well, actually, no. Let's get our shills in. Harry, where should people go when they realise you're an intelligent lad with a lot to say? Where should they find more Harry?
Don't oversell me. Come on. I don't want to let these people down. Well, if you are interested in anything that I have to say, you can find me on lotuseaters.com, the website of one former Sargon of Akkad, now currently known as Carl Benjamin, his slightly less evil alter ego. We also, that's where we'll find our premium content. You can also go on YouTube and find the podcast of the Lotus Eaters. We do the podcast every day on the website, but the segments themselves, if you'd rather watch 20-minute digestible chunks of the subjects that we're covering, is on YouTube under the podcast Lotus Eaters. Recently, we've been doing a bit of cover of the Menace of London, that being Mizzy the Menace. We've been Mizzy posting.
S to spit chat.
Yes, S to spit. And if you're interested in comic books, I have a monthly series on the website with my colleague Connor, who has also appeared on this show before when you covered Midnight Mass, where we talk about comic books. It's called Comics Corner. And apart from that, I also do premium content here and there when I've done all of my research. At the moment, I am doing some pretty spicy research into, shall we say, historic connections. Yes, thank you, Murgut. Subscribe to LE for £5 per month. That's right. You're not poor. If you've got time to be listening to this right now, you don't have to be scrubbing toilets. I know you can afford a £5 a month, everybody. So come on, cough it up right now. I'm doing some research, spicy research into a subject which I don't think gets enough attention, which is everybody knows Mary Whitehouse, right? You all know the name Mary Whitehouse.
We love Mary Whitehouse here.
The Prophet of Doom, you could say, not to be too referential to a particular Iranian rug merchant. But she made certain comments about, shall we say, the gay rights movement back in the 1970s. And I've been doing some research and finding that when she was associating with that particular movement with a particular type of person, it seems that there are more connections between organizations, shall we say, that were pushing that stuff back in the 70s and organizations like Pi and the behavior of people like Harvey Milk and other gay rights icons. It becomes understandable why Mary Whitehouse and others were so hesitant to support such a movement. Not to say anything about the individual character of particular people I'm associated with, by the way, just to be clear on that one.
We know what stream you're on. It's all good.
I just feel the need because, you know, I'm kind of golden rule-esque. I don't want to be mean to people. It's my Anglo individualism still shines through. It's like, you know, I can recognize the faults with particular movements, but I still judge the individuals.
Good lad. Yes, highly recommended. That's going to be good. I am looking forward to you shining a little light on Harvey and the Matachine Society.
Yes.
And TCG, how about yourself?
I'm still writing the Leopold and Loeb script. I'm currently at the confession stage of that one, so I'm hoping to get that done in the next day or two. It's just I've been caught up with other things as well. See, this is the thing about being a part-time YouTuber is I can't dedicate my whole time. But if you were to subscribe to my channel and become a channel member for $1.99, you get me one step closer to becoming a full-time YouTuber. Or you can go over to Patreon for £2 a month. I know that a lot of people don't like Patreon. I'm not a particular fan either, so I might get a subscribe star along the lines. But in terms of more immediate stuff, I will be doing a live stream over on my second channel tomorrow night. I haven't streamed on that channel for about 7 months, I think. And that one is more dedicated for like more chill out stuff, gaming streams. And we're going to be playing Ace Attorney tomorrow night. One of my favourite games. Which was originally came out on the DS. Was recently, I say recently, a few years ago. It was ported over to like your PS4s, PCs, and Nintendo Switches. So I will be playing a ported version. It is a brilliant text and read and click game. But yeah, come and join me. I'll pop a link in the chat to my second channel if you aren't already subscribed. We're currently at 127 at the moment. I would like to get that to 128.
Those are rookie numbers.
guys.
You got to pump those up, guys. Come on.
Come on,
Let's do it.
do it. Folks, listen, £5 a month for us, £2 a month for that crime guy. That's £7 a month. That's less than a boneless banquet from KFC. You can forego a boneless banquet a month to support us and help put a boneless banquet on our tables.
Quite frankly, take the money you would have spent on that 3 a.m. kebab. You don't know what the meat is. We're going to save you the horror in the morning. Just skip it, save the money, put it towards my boy
Save the
Harry
money,
and my boy
have some
TCG.
lovely cheese on toast instead.
I will say, just sort of going back, I was very tempted to make a video about Mizzy. I don't normally cover stuff like that on my main channel, albeit true crime. But my God, he has been winding me up something chronic this week. Like, to put in perspective, man, I have an 18-year-old, and I just cannot believe how opposite those two are. I mean,
it's fatherless behaviour. That's the problem. I think when he was on Piers Morgan, he even said he's not in touch with his mother, he's not in touch with his father. And the funny thing was, all of the black people that I've seen commenting on the situation have all just gone fatherless behaviour. This man grew up without a dad. We can see it immediately.
Yeah,
He's become public enemy number one as far as I'm concerned. He's got a hateable face.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely doesn't have somebody, in his ear, for, more sort of senior person, giving him that guidance. It's just ludicrous. And of all the ones, the only one he seems to be able to really defend is the one where he steals the dog, because he turns around, he said that he spoke to the woman beforehand. But it's just like, but that's not what you're putting out there. People don't see that happen, that conversation take place. And there's absolutely no excuse to just bowl into people's homes, leapfrog Jewish people, threaten people.
One thing he got in trouble for before everybody turned against him. The entire internet decided they hated him, and then the police stepped up. Anyway, we probably don't want to turn this into a rank punditry stream, do we?
But we
stop shilling for Bernie Goats.
I tell you, if there's one thing,
to Unpopular Opinions.
Regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, I'm pretty confident that Mizzy is a uniting topic.
I even saw, of all people, Aaron Bastani Mizzy posting. So that's how you know. If Novara Media, the head of Novara Media, started to notice, then my God.
Yeah,
Goodness me.
You done screwed up, man.
Oh, dear. All right, lovely stuff. There we go. Oh, and my own shilling. Well, folks, last week I treated you to a reading of one of the Roald Dahl adult stories that inspired Tales of the Unexpected, the series we covered. It was read wonderfully by Simon Roberts. Can't believe I forgot his name. We've got a bunch of these, and I probably shouldn't have dropped it on a Tuesday evening. It is much more of a weekend vibe. So I will drop you the second one probably on Saturday, I think. So there we go. And that's Man from the South. We already have the next one sent over, so there's going to be a stream of those. So check those out. It's a good sort of late evening with a brandy, relaxing vibe. It's very cozy. I think you'll really enjoy it. And otherwise, I'm afraid I am super, super busy all over the place. It is allotment season. It is all kinds of things going on. And I'm still basically in the position of having a whole bunch recorded and no time to edit. But I will be getting out as and when, and if I get some time off, then maybe some glut of videos. But for the meantime, the next thing you're probably going to see is the next reading, which I'll probably drop on Friday or Saturday. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel, we have super chats. If you do not want to send any money into the grubby pockets of Neil Mohan, then you can support me on Subscribestar, where you can join up as a member or leave a tip. But if you join up as a member either here or on Subscribestar, you will get access to exclusive content. And there's going to be a whole bunch of that coming when we go back onto the anthology arcs. Because frankly, there's too much to cover. So we do bonus episodes, and that's a nice way of rewarding people who put their hand in their pocket and support me, which I much appreciated. Is all going towards my own brandy preferences, but also the larger project for which I have to buy old business books from 1996, True Facts. It's got the cheesiest cover. I can't wait to show you. Anyway, that is enough from me. I'm rambling, and we can start talking in depth about Triangle. Harry, would you like to attempt the pint of Guinness summary? I also filmed new footage for the Guinness summary, and I haven't had time to edit that either.
Okay, I can give it a go.
The roughly 2 minutes time it takes to pour a pint on us. This
Roughly
triangle,
2 minutes.
what is it?
All right.
Last chance to bail out before spoilers, guys.
Here we go. Get that countdown clock going.
Oh, shall I? Hang on, I'll get you the video. I'm still looking for my video. Crikey.
Oh.
I think you might just have to go. I can't find it.
All right, just time me. Okay.
Yep.
So, are we ready?
Yep. And go.
Film opens with a mother consoling her autistic child who seems to be struggling. She cleans up after him. She picks up an upturned boat in a paddling pool, which seems to be some kind of foreshadowing. She cleans up paint, and then we get a lot of disconnected shots of her cleaning up the house before she goes to... she takes him along in the car, and then she arrives without him at a docks where she is going for a sailing ride with a person that she knows through her job. It's stated that he invited her because he frequents the cafe that she works at, or bar, I forget exactly which one. And they go, there's a few people there. One of the man's friends is trying to set him up with somebody else because she thinks that our main character, Jess, is bad for him. There's no explanation of where the son has gone other than he is at school, given that he's autistic and it's a Saturday. This is supposed to be understandable because it's special school who are open on Saturdays. While they are sailing out, they seem to be making some kind of connection while Greg, the guy who's interested in her, his friend is trying to set him up with somebody else, as mentioned. But then some storm arrives, knocks over the boat, capsizes everything. One of them, the woman that she was trying to set Greg up with, Heather, goes missing, is never seen again through the entire film. And then as they are trying to figure out what they're going to do on the upside of the capsized boat, a bigger boat shows up. They look up and see a figure standing on the top of the bow, so they think they can just go in, get help, and go home. They get on. The boat is actually abandoned, and as they are there, weird things begin to happen. Jess is getting some deja vu of the boat. She thinks she's been here before. They go about, they start to split up, and wouldn't you know, one of them gets killed. Greg gets killed to begin with, and what was his name? Victor gets killed to begin with, then Greg, and they get picked off one by one by a weird masked assailant. Jess eventually knocks the masked assailant off of the boat, then realizes that the boat has returned with all of them on it. She hides for a bit. A similar turn of events seems to happen, but slightly different this time, and it turns out the person underneath the mask is a different version of Jess. I forget exactly how they get there, but Jess is running about trying to save people. She can't save people. Other Jess manages to kill a few of the people before getting killed by another Jess who has been on the boat the entire time. And God, this is a difficult one. Okay.
It is past. Oh, dear.
I think Horrorshow just left.
Oh, dear.
Gosh darn it, I'm
past
sorry.
The Guinness is overflowing. Oh, dear.
Oh, dear. Spilt. The head is ruined.
Well, in fairness, this is an absolute nightmare to try and summarize, isn't it? It's complex.
I wouldn't actually say it's a bad film to watch and understand as you're going, but trying to explain it back in 2 minutes. I'll keep going just to finish it off. She sees another version of herself kill the one that's been killing the other people. Then she realizes that what you have to do to try and get off the boat is to kill all of the versions of her friends and herself, possibly, who are already on the boat. She tries to do that by putting the mask on herself. It does not work. She ends up getting knocked off the boat in a repeat of what happened nearer to the beginning of the film when she knocked somebody else off of the boat. She wakes up, finds herself on the beach, goes home, sees the version of herself from the beginning of the film beating her autistic child, or at least slapping and abusing her autistic child, realizes what's been going on, kills that version of herself, tries to console her child, drives away back to the boat with the child in a repeat of the scene from the beginning, ends up getting into a car crash because of a seagull hitting into the windscreen. The car turns over. We realize she's been dead the whole time, and this has been some kind of purgatory. as a taxi driver shows up and takes her back to the beginning of the film when she gets to the boat, and then we're left to assume that the events will repeat over and over and over again. That's the best I can do. I'm sorry.
Nice. No apologies.
I will say that's it's a pretty strong seagull to cause that much damage to a car.
Well, it's more that it left some blood on the windscreen. The child started to cry, and then they get into an argument. While they're arguing, she drives the car into a truck, if I remember.
Correct.
Yep.
And they all die, and the child is dead as well. So they say you make a beautiful corpse, but with a haircut like that, I'm not certain.
Oh no!
Well, to be fair, they do cover up the boy's face when you've got people attending to them, so
true.
You can't see the hair.
Mm. Oh dear. Oh, it's like that kid from the youngest kid from Malcolm in the Middle. That's who he reminded me of. Very age reference. Yeah, the tiny one. He's got that haircut, right?
To be fair, he's kind of got a Danny haircut from The Shining. Maybe that's another reference.
Oh, funny you mentioned that. Well, we can do our Shining posting, of course we can. But I'll just say, yeah, you got it. Effectively, we get served something that. I mean, I love it. You basically get served a whole horror movie condensed into about 15 minutes when they first get on the boat.
More times, and it evolves each time, which I appreciated. I will say, just as this, I don't even know if this is a criticism. This might just be because I'm used to watching strange films. The second there was a mention of Sisyphus, I did clock on to what might be happening, but it did go in directions that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I think in fairness, it's there for not everyone's going to pick up on it. It's
there
and
for
I
the
think
6%ers.
I don't want to sound too big-brained, but I kind of had the feeling it was going to be something like that beforehand. When I saw the kid behaving at the beginning, right, I kind of thought to myself, yeah, that kid's autistic, and that's only because of life experience, like through my brother.
Well,
the second time.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was to say because the very sort of obsessive behaviour and the way that the little lad was getting upset over sort of like minor trivial stuff, I was kind of like, okay, there's something wrong with that kid. And then the fact that she was all groggy, and then there was other bits as well, just sort of leading up to it, where she mentioned something. It was like one line. She says when she's talking about her son. She says something like, I have, it's the same every day. If I do something different, I'll lose him. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then there's other bits of imagery. I don't know if you've got like screen grabs of it as we go on, but I noticed when she was walking around the big boat, there were quite a few shots of her like standing in front of like multiple mirrors.
Oh, the reflection imagery.
Yeah.
Yes, that was
really?
The second I started to notice that, I was like, okay, I see where we're going here.
Yeah, exactly.
Personality.
That's it.
Different versions of her. This one's a good one because it surprised me when they go the second way around, the second loop, when I realized, it's not just the two versions of her, there's the three versions. So there's a bit more of a progress from one version of her to the one that goes crazy and kills everybody than I was expecting.
Yeah, it wasn't just a standard like Groundhog Day film at that point.
Yeah.
No, there was a bit more progression in her character.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like, okay, this isn't going to be like a Groundhog Day scenario where like if she does do something different, then she's going to break the cycle. I felt like I feel like no matter what she does, she's eventually leading to the same destination.
Interestingly, when I looked this up earlier, one of the things that I had missed, which was clearer thinking about it again after I read it, was that the three versions of her on the ship at the same time are never just the same version of her going through the same events necessarily, because one version of her at any one time is either going to be unaware of what happened before or aware of what happened before, because it seems that depending on how she goes out, if she is thrown off the ship, she remembers. If she is bludgeoned to death, she doesn't remember anymore. So the one that we see at the beginning seems to be one that's just got back from being bludgeoned to death and has forgotten what's happened. Whereas by the end, she's turned into one of the ones who does remember. But inevitably, even with that prior experience and that prior knowledge, she can never stop the events from coming out the same way.
Yes, very true, very true. I mean, you picked up on one of the intricacies there. Like TCG, you said you'd picked up the loop, and it's it sounds like you're picking up the symbols that were being put out there quite early.
I don't normally pick up on those things, so is what I'm saying. I don't want to be big. I don't want to come across big brain, but I thought I worked it up before. It was genuinely like I saw that and I was just like, okay.
And when I'm at a guess, like when you see her for the first time, like she is spacey, isn't she?
Yeah.
Oh, the second she shows up without child, saying, "Oh, he's at school," and people are starting to question that, I thought, okay, the kid's dead. Whether it was her fault directly or accidentally, I guess we'll find out. But that kid is dead. Because something has gone on. She is spooked. She is spacey. One of the other things that I found interesting was because, like I mentioned, they make mention of Sisyphus and that story. So I thought, okay, so this is going to be a story about an endless struggle that you feel like you're going to get to the end of, but then it resets to the beginning. That's understandable. But then I also noticed the drum when they go into, I think it's the theater or the first hall that they enter in the ship, has an A and an O, and I immediately went, okay, we're talking Greeks, Alpha, Omega, beginning and ending, one and the same. And I think the A even has the line in the middle of the A goes through the O as well, so it's showing that the beginning and the ending are connected.
I don't know if I have a picture of that, but you're correct. They go out of the way to show you that. Folks, can you see why I invite these two on? They picked this stuff up straight away. Like, I love it. I absolutely love it. I don't have to do any work here. You've got all the stuff.
Cool. Right. See you next week, folks.
Yeah. All right. Have fun.
Good stream, lads. Make sure to subscribe to Lotus Eaters. Don't be poor. £5. And nice one, guys.
You could be less poor if you subscribe and become a member of my channel. Just saying.
There you go.
I was going to ask Harry, like, this is a bit of a Lynch special. I thought of you when I was doing the rewatch. This scene right at the very start, the very first thing we're told. Where is it? Do you remember the wording on this? It's something like, "Don't be upset. Don't when I see something scary, I think of something else."
Yeah.
Which I would have thought you, as a Lynch person, you're like, I've heard this before.
Yes, also the very idea of there being multiple versions of the same character who have different goals and aims at different points is very Lynchian as well. It's very much like, I know you've not watched all of Twin Peaks, but that becomes a big part in the third series of Twin Peaks. Different versions of characters who all are working against one another.
Yeah, I'm not, well, as you say, I haven't seen Twin Peaks, but that idea has come up so much. And this is effectively a character just telling you what you're going to see is not necessarily reality. And when we talked about using Lynch analysis, what I basically mean by that is if you're struggling to understand what the heck is going on, how can that happen? How can that be true? Often it's not true, but you try and think of what does the character you're following want? What would they want to happen?
Yes, a lot of the time, character wish fulfillment is what's driving the plot forward rather than a mechanical consistency in sort of like how the universe works, so to speak. But also just emotionally, I think intuiting, okay, I can recognize the emotional state that the character is in. I can recognize the events, not necessarily the linear events of what's happening around them, but what emotionally is happening around the character. Where is the emotion of the scene pushing? That's generally a bit more of a clue as to what's going on in the narrative.
Yeah, and you can take that logic quite deep with this. We might try that. We'll see how we go. There's loads of directions.
I certainly could.
But
Looking forward to
lovely.
it.
All right, sweet. You at the end, Harry, you said we realised she was dead. I want to ask TCG, your reading. Do you think she was dead at the end?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think the taxi driver was sort of a metaphor for death. and it's kind of like, where do you want to go from this point?
I saw, especially with Greek, the taxi driver is, I forget the rowboat for the River Styx.
Cavron.
Yes, that is kind of like that. And if she is dead, then this is some kind of purgatory that she's undertaking. If she isn't dead, and if she's, like, say, lying in a hospital in a coma or something, this is some kind of wish fulfillment where she is trying to manufacture a situation in her mind where she can turn back time, she can get off of the boat, back onto the sailboat, turn around and go and save her son before she was abusive to him, before she was doing any of the nasty stuff and mistreating him. But in some quite good imagery, I would say, whenever she does try and get back onto that boat, quite literally, it has sailed. That boat has already sailed.
Yeah. I mean,
wow, yeah.
We're talking imagery. This film is packed through. You rewatch this, knowing what happens, you will be amazed at how much is in there. Even this taxi, that's for our modern version of Charon here, it says on the side, striving for excellence.
Yes, I saw that as well.
Basically, yeah. Oh, that's what she's doing. She's going to go back in and try and fix it. She's striving for excellence and she will fail. And he says, I'll be waiting for you. There's the imagery, the ship has sailed. The fact that it's a sailing boat, so it's driven by wind, so it's driven by something greater than she is. She is basically being pushed in one direction with a limited ability to steer where she goes. And of course, the wind is, I believe, Aeolus, which is the name of the ship. In Greek mythology, one of the things that Aeolus is related to is the power of the wind. What else? Oh, the tide imagery. We see her wake up on the beach with the tide, and the tide is cyclical, coming in and out. There is so much imagery in here, just like boosting that message, just telling you over and over again, she's in a cycle.
Yeah, that storm that comes in that capsizes the boat in the first place as well, that could be, if you wanted to look at it this way, a displacement of her own bad qualities, shall we say. She's trying to displace it. The thing that puts them in the situation in the first place has become something disembodied from herself. It's not her own mistakes, the fact she abuses her own children, but even when displacing it, it still manages to hurt the people around her, because Heather presumably gets sucked off into the storm and drowns before she can even get onto that boat.
We got the important thing. Yeah, I think now they do go out their way to mention it. Yes, Aeolus is Sisyphus's father. And I did wonder when I think if they were making this now, they probably wouldn't mention Sisyphus. But it feels a bit like a little obvious to name him directly. Whereas if you see the name Aeolus, you're tempted to just give it a quick Google and see where it comes from. But
I was going to, until they just explicitly spelled out what it was.
Yeah, same here.
I was like, oh, that's easy. That saves me a Google.
Yeah. All right. So you're both on the side of she has died. I think, in fairness, we don't actually know. And one of the things Christopher Smith that we've seen over and over again, he loves ambiguity. He doesn't want one like Reddit gold earning post that explains absolutely everything definitively. He is absolutely fine with ambiguity.
The Rugrats were dead the whole time, guys.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you for the gold, kind sir. He's the mind. He's throwing it out there. What he said, and I thought, Harry, I thought you'd love this. He says, there should be some logic there, but the main thing is that it's emotionally true.
There you go.
Just realised, sort of going back to the taxi man. Sorry.
Oh no, go on.
She never paid the toll.
No.
Oh yeah, he left it running.
Yeah, that's a thing. That's part of the mythology as well. I think is that Sisyphus cheats death and runs away. So she does the same thing. Yeah, it's a great observation. She cheats him. She goes away.
Takes on the role of Sisyphus.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was dead from the very beginning of this film. To be honest, I think you're essentially picking it up from the beginning of one of the loops.
That's certainly what I think, especially
Yeah.
given that the ship is shown to have certain characteristics, that physical manifestations that that sustain throughout different loops. For instance, what was her name? The red-headed woman. All of that in some particularly effective imagery that I found when she chases her up to the top deck and finds that there's that little bit of the ship that's cornered away that is full of different versions of her corpse.
Oh,
So
that's
the
my
fact that
favourite
there are,
scene.
yeah, that was probably my favorite bit of imagery in the whole film. The fact that there are so many different versions of her corpse, and when she looks down that drain as well and realizes she's dropped her necklace down there, there's just a pile of other versions of that same necklace with the pendant of her son on it. I think
Same
that's
happens
pretty
again with
clear that this has happened dozens of times before. We don't know exactly how many times, but this has happened plenty of times.
And the same happens right at the end as well with the seagulls when she picks a seagull up off the floor.
Oh, that was fantastic. That was so nice because
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh, she's not escaped the loop, has she? Because that'd be kind of, I would feel like it would be a bit like too hopeful. This feels like a film with little hope in it.
Yeah.
No hope at all. I mean, you said from the start, Harry, that you picked up on something that we get the idea that she's in a time loop, and I think TCG, like you said, that wasn't some. You just got that. I think a lesser film would have had that as the big revelation and tried to make the whole film just that. But I think Christopher Smith sees that we'll get that quite quickly. So it's on the very second loop that Jess messes with the pattern. You know, she does something different and confronts herself. So we see something new, and we see that the loops don't have to be exact replicas.
No, but I do think that despite the fact she maybe tries to escape from the loop and the pattern, I think that's a result of the two different versions of her interacting in a similar way than they have before. So even when she is trying to escape from the pattern that she's fallen into, she's actually just conforming to it, which is because she's the version of herself that has no prior knowledge of what's going on, whereas she doesn't realize she's interacting with that same version. Because even when we think she has broken the loop, when we get up to where the red-headed woman's corpses are, the very fact that there are so many corpses in that one particular spot shows that this variation has happened dozens of times already.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the beautiful intricacies of this is we see her trying to change it, but then we also get the reinforcement that we must know actually you can't change it that easily, and some things you just keep coming back to. Like the fact that we see in the very first time she changes something and confronts herself with a gun but can't shoot herself, Victor still dies. So we see that's almost like a fixed point in the loop. And then we see things like this letter writing which just accumulates. So we know it's not just like this endless loop. Think that you get this kind of mess building up, this sort of chaos from all the looping. Things like she sees this note, she wants to check she wrote it, check it's her handwriting, so she writes a new note, and you just see how they accumulate. And then the exact same thing with all the sort of 70 plus versions of her necklace falling down the grate, and that is all building up to that absolutely amazing horrific imagery of if the lockets are accumulating and the notes are accumulating, where are the bodies? And we see her get rid of a few of them, but then ultimately that
does also also explain why there's already so many splatters of blood about the place, and why, for instance, I think at one point she looks at one of the railings and sees that there is already a blood stain there, and later after one version of her pushes Victor against that spike that's coming out of the wall, he falls, grabs his neck, and puts his hand in that same place. So the blood was already there. He's just added to it. Another interesting thing that I noticed that I heard it in the film and thought it was important, but it helped when I read about it and figured out that the two different Jesses, two different versions of Jess at any one time, rather than the three, there's the two variations of her, was that when we see her do that to Victor in the second loop, when she pushes him against the wall, it's an accident. Whereas in that third loop, when she's skulking around trying to figure out what she's going to do, and she sees the other version of herself who's in that version's second loop, she seems to be know what she's doing, because you hear her say to Victor, "I need you to die," and then purposefully pushes him against the wall. It's a nice little detail that's a hint as to what's going on. That adds a bit more depth.
Definitely. I think we might have more than two versions of her. But ultimately, they do reinforce it. So even when it's this terrible thing of when she tries to break the pattern, she creates, say, a more knowing or a meaner version of her that ultimately causes a version of her who reacts to that, and then she ends back where she was. So I think it's probably more than just two.
Yes.
I think we have loads of variations that ultimately lead her in the same place.
Yeah,
and
it's very much an all roads lead to Rome scenario.
yes,
Yeah, that meaner version of her is really mean. The way she leads those, the two of them, the red-haired woman and that guy that they were with. What was his name? Downey, whatever his name was.
Downey.
Yeah, into the room, and then just emotionlessly cuts his throat and stabs him to death. That was a brutal scene.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, I don't suppose you guys noticed which room that happened in, did you?
Was it 237 or
was it the Shining room?
It was.
It was the Shining room.
It was the funny number. Woo. Okay. I mean, I would love to talk about this. Did you guys? So I think I forewarned everyone. If you can, rewatch The Shining before this, because I think it does go a fair bit deeper than just the funny number. I think it's probably fair to say.
do you know what? I thought there was something significant about that number, but because again, for my sins, I haven't seen The Shining, so
You've not watched The Shining? My God.
No, and I have got it. I'm pretty sure I've got it on DVD. I just still haven't watched it to this day.
Oh, delicious.
Well, you should give it a watch, because it's more than just this number that's a reference to it. There's also just lots of variations of how the shots are filmed, like the tracking shots down the long corridors, and the use of the long corridor imagery are all direct callbacks to The Shining.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, even Dr. Prepper just mentioned that as well.
Yeah.
His home address number is 237 as well. Oh, okay.
It's got multiple levels of reference to The Shining, and as you say, Harry, the tracking down the corridor is very similar. Now I'm going to try not to spoil it, TCG, because I want you to enjoy it. We're going to have a great time watching that.
I kind of figured out. I mean, it's 43 years old, I think.
It is.
I know how it ends at the very least. So
okay, fair play. I won't worry as much, but just let's say elements like a bathroom in room 237 being the scene of horror, messages written on the mirrors, framing of shots. I've mentioned this one before, where you have someone you see through their room from a hallway, from a corridor, and the door frame cuts them off, kind of obscuring their face and obscuring their motive. That is a shot from The Shining that is used early on, and it's copied here. Let's say we've had the ballroom as well. But the main thing, other than just those visual reference points, the use of the axe, is the idea of the non-literal space. That the Overlook Hotel isn't just a hotel. The Shining isn't necessarily a film about a haunting. It is possibly a film about madness. And the fact that if you look into analysis of The Shining, especially Rob Agar is your expert on The Shining, gold standard. So do look him up if you want to really see a much deeper version of The Shining. But he does a great job pointing out how the geography inside the hotel makes no sense. It does not work. It is like an Escher painting. Logically, things cannot lead into each other. And this ship is a lot like that. The very first time they're moving through the corridors, if you notice, everyone goes in and turns right. And the camera just keeps going down the corridor, turns left. and then they cross it again, which is sort of an impossible shot. But it's trying to get you the idea of the space is not literal.
Okay.
Yes, I noticed that as well. I either thought it. Well, no, I thought exactly as you did, that the space isn't literal. Also, it's a good technique for disorientating the audience, because it just plays with your expectations, even on something as simple as camera movement. An audience goes in, and when they're watching a film, especially a horror film like this, that they're expecting to be a normal thriller, they expect the camera to work in a particular way, and then it doesn't, and that upends your entire expectations in a very subtle way.
Yeah. I mean, there is so much messing with the audience in this, I think, and I kind of love it. Just when you catch the rules, they'll switch it up on you.
That's why I found this to be, even when I began to really cotton on to what's going on in the narrative, it still stayed interesting to me, just because of the filmmaking on a moment-to-moment basis was really engaging in a way that I really liked.
Yeah, there's so many things. Like, this is one of the best rewatches because there's so much in there. I was just going to say, since I brought up The Shining and the idea that The Shining might be about a haunted hotel, or it could be about a man losing his mind, or it could be something else. As we said, there's a few ways you can take this film. So I just thought I'd throw it out to chat and ask chat what you think's going on there, which of the main theories for what we're seeing here. Do you think what we're seeing is a kind of genuine fantastical sci-fi phenomenon, like them being in a Bermuda Triangle zone, which is causing the time skip? Do you think she's died and is in purgatory? Do you think this is all a kind of madness episode and she's just lost her mind? I'm interested in where chat lands on that. There is no definitive answer here, but I just thought, I'd just like to see what you all come up with. And while that's happening, yes, so we've touched on some of the Shining references and how it goes a bit deeper. I'd quite like to take it on into some of the sort of analysis of seeing this from a character's wish fulfillment.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, cool. Or maybe, what's a good way into this?
You said you had some form of Freudian analysis of this. I'm very interested to hear where you take that.
Okay, well, I can go very, very big on this, but let's take the basic angle that Triangle is a film about wish fulfillment, which leans a lot more into the sort of madness explanation, which is essentially from the very first scene we're told, if something's horrific, if something's upsetting, I see something else. I think of something else, which is effectively telling you this isn't happening. So the wish, and you've got little clues that you can read, little clues that link the ship, the Olus, to where she is. So you've got things like the room number 237 is her house number. You've got the fact that, where is it? The inciting incident, if you will, is her flipping out because she saw her kid's boat upturned in the swimming pool. So she flips out there. You've got the fact that the AO, the Alpha Omega, the Aeolus symbol that's on the drum in the ballroom is also seen on the drum of the marching band. We can draw quite a lot of these inferences. I am going to make a video and I'll just lay them all out because there are so many of them. But effectively, there's this idea that none of the stuff on the boat is happening. But we should look at what the stuff on the boat symbolizes. Ultimately, you know, we all come away being certain, as you guys said from the very start, her son's dead, right? That's done. I mean, I'll be honest. The second I saw her shoving the heavy bag into the car boot, I thought, okay, her son's in that.
Right.
From the very start, that's why I was thinking.
Close, but no cigar.
All she wanted to do was go on the cruise, right? She's got it on a note on the fridge. This was her escape. She is, from what we know, she's not well off. She's probably poor. She works in a cafe. She's got a difficult time because she's a single mother with an autistic kid who really stretches her abilities here. She's very long patience. She's got this, and we know that she snaps. And we can go into more detail on that, more interpretation, but let's just say she snaps. She's hit a kid. She's abused him. She's run out of patience. All she wants to do is not be in the house. You know, her kid's dead and she wants to not be in the house, and she wants to be on that cruise. So that's where she pictures herself. And what she's trying to do throughout that is often she's fighting with herself. She's seeing herself as not herself. She often sees herself from an outside perspective because what she's trying to do is distance herself. She's trying to say, I'm not the person who did the bad thing. Just like she said at the start, when I see something bad, when I see something horrifying, I think of something else. She's thinking of something else. She's thinking that the woman who abused her kid, it's not her. She didn't do it. That's why she's fighting with herself. That's why when she's taking everyone out, she has to cover her face. And she says explicitly to Greg, it's not me. I didn't do it. It's all wish fulfillment to distance herself from her actions. I've gone on for ages there, so I'll leave that there. There's loads of... What do you guys think of that?
I like it. So essentially what you're trying to say is this was one long psychotic episode.
Maybe. I mean, Christopher Smith would not give you a solid answer. I
know he would. He's a bloody nuisance for that. He is, I must say.
EFAP would hate it. They'd be like, no, you can't just have the thing be non-rational and have a symbolic sense. But I'm all for it.
I mean, this film can be interpreted in many ways. I think Mergu said it when you put up the poll, like, why can't it be all? I mean, this could be sort of a supernatural purgatory, forever state kind of film. It could also be something like just her having a psychotic break and, like you say, trying to distance herself and otherize her actions and attribute it to someone who isn't her. I mean, she even does that after she eventually gets back and she sees her variant, giving her kid a hard time and then and ultimately whacking him. She goes in there and deals out justice to the woman who was abusing her son, but that woman was ultimately her. But she even says to her son, like, it's okay, that woman isn't mummy. She's still very much in denial about it. It's like, it is you, and that's the problem. You are doing these things and you're not coming to terms with it. It's quite unfortunate. Again, it's silly, but whenever anything with autism in it, I'm already interested. As I say, because because of my brother, and to a degree, I can understand her frustrations, having to live in a household with a child who has such, special needs. Not to say that like that was what my mum was like by any given stretch of imagination, but I can certainly sympathise with it because it is difficult, and I know how much it did personally, have an impact as I was growing up, and so I could kind of even though what she did can be or is unacceptable.
Do you think they did a good job with the portrayal then?
Well, I mean, they didn't really do much. I mean, you don't really see much of the boy in the film anyway. But I think with the notes that they hit, they did it quite well. But I think it was more on the focus, because she was a single mother, and she was obviously struggling, and I think it was they handled that quite well, I think. Because they didn't make it out to be like, she's this perfect mum who's like this boss girl who can, work a job and look after a disabled son, with a big bright smile on her face. The reality is much, much more saddening than that, shall we say?
Yeah.
If I can add to
go
this
ahead.
as well, I agree basically with everything that's been said so far. I just want to add an extra detail, which is, as you said, she's trying to displace everything. This isn't me. This is the evil version of me. That's the version of me that hits. But the whole Sisyphean aspect of it as well is, no matter what personal development that she's able to go through, even with the prior knowledge when she re-enters the loop, where she knows what she has to do, she just can't actually do it. She's never going to actually be able to make the proper changes that she needs to. She will always end up reverting back, because near the end, when they are in the car, right before the car crashes again, even though this is the version of herself that has supposedly, bludgeoned the evil version of herself to death and disposed of that aspect of herself, hopefully forever, the fact that the loop returns in the first place says it enough that this still won't last. But it's also the point where the seagull hits the windscreen, the blood goes on, the child starts to freak out about it, and they get into an argument. Even at that point, despite the fact that this is supposed to be the good version of her now, she's already starting to slip back into that pattern of behavior, because she's starting to shout at him, which is why she ends up turning her head and crashing in the first place.
You are absolutely spot on. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's kind of these inescapable character flaws that she finds herself with, that she can't run away from as well. It's not just, like you say, trying to turn back time, change herself. It's the fact that she can't change herself fundamentally.
Yeah. Because I don't think anybody would question the fact that she loves her son, and that I don't think anyone would question that. But yeah, these are characteristics, as you say, that she just isn't able to get away from, no matter how hard she tries. Because ultimately, when the dust has settled, her life is still going to be the same.
And on that as well, within the narrative, what we actually see on screen, if you're just going through she's trying to escape herself, it would be kind of difficult to place where the other characters that she interacts with, Greg, Downey, and the others, where they would fit into this as well. But I would think I find it more difficult with somebody like Downey, and somebody like maybe the red-haired woman could be a representative of the kind of people who will intentionally try to push you down and push you away from something that could help. But Greg is definitely somebody who potentially could be a positive influence for her. But even then, whether she wants to or not, intentionally or unintentionally, she still ends up hurting him. So they could be representative of this idea that it's not just her alone. She does have something of a support network around her, but because of her own character flaws, she ends up hurting them anyway, pushing them away. In the metaphorical sense, she kills them.
Yeah. And that is something as well that I can relate to, from a personal perspective. Again, through my own personal experiences. In situations like that, it is very difficult to admit that you need help.
Yes,
because
you wonder to yourself, what would happen if she told them what was going on and explained, and you showed, there's multiple versions of me here. Let's try and figure out how we can figure this all out together. No, she doesn't. She still goes through those same steps. No matter what she does, she decides, I need to kill these people.
Yeah. I mean,
if you want to add... go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because like Sally early on in the film, she's quite she objects quite badly to Jess. She's very much like she's got a, I don't want to say the word because family friendly stream, but she's got an R-worded son, and is quite derogatory of little Tommy and Sally, and Jess, sorry, by extension. I mean, she could sort of be like a representation of that kind of like social rejection, I suppose. If we're looking at sort of like how each person could be represented, because I think you're right, Harry. They don't really. I can't really see how these people physically would sit within this within her life, but I can sort of understand. You could sort of pluck characteristics from them.
They seem
and
more
say,
like
right,
archetypal figures representing
Yeah.
the sorts of people that she would interact with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I can take a shot at that if you want.
Shoot.
But just a quick thing, just like building on that, I think something we've touched on here that I want to round off is this is ripe for sort of very special episode, issue of the week, awareness raising stuff. And Christopher Smith just steps right over it. Like, this is, I think the issue of the autistic son is not treated with kid gloves.
No, it's not.
It's sensitive, it's realistic. She's in a bad situation. Realistic, it's just very realistic. I think it's believable. It's a tough situation. They don't hide the fact that, you know, he is difficult because of his condition, and it makes it all the more tragic. She does love him. She does want to protect him, but she's absolutely just at the end of her tether and she cannot cope, and she can't admit to it. And so I just think this thing it's handled so sensitively. Sort of like there's a book that was big ages ago and it became a stage play called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. Now, I don't know how well that would stand up for portraying autism, but the main character is autistic, and there's a bit where the dad just loses it with him, and the book doesn't try and hide the fact that he would be quite difficult to deal with. And so you can understand where the dad comes from even without condoning it. And you just see it as like, yeah, this is the harsh reality of a difficult condition.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just want to round that off. I love how they handled it, you know, not to sound, cliche, but it was very balanced, you know. It's very balanced. But to try and read a little bit further about what all these extra characters are, why the heck they're there, if she wouldn't know them physically. Leaning a bit on the kind of on the wish fulfillment, this is where we get a little more into Freudian territory. And I will point out, like, I'm going to do a video on this. I'm going to deep dive it because it's a bit complex and I need to do a lot more reading. So I might mangle this horribly, as anyone who talks about Freud and psychoanalytics on the internet is going to.
This can be the first rough first draft.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not plucking this out of the air. Kubrick was very influenced by Freud in the making of The Shining. He was a lot more influenced by Freud and also the wonderful film The Haunting than he was by Stephen King's book, certainly. And he got a lot of it from an essay called Die Unheimlich, The Uncanny. And Christopher Smith explicitly references this fact. So he's explicitly said, I love The Shining, I love the psychoanalytics of The Shining, and there's this particular Freudian essay that influenced The Shining that was a big influence on this. So I'm not plucking Freud randomly out here. It's everywhere. It's like even the fact like the little kid wears a little spaceship on his clothing, just the way Danny does on his jumper in The Shining. The links are everywhere. Okay, back to the Freud. So I would take the characters on the boat and I would split them up into sort of 3 groups, because basically it's the couple Sally and Downey and their friend who disappears, Heather. Victor is another group, and your boy Greg here is another. So obviously you know where I'm going with this. Id, ego, superego. So thinking of this as a battle with herself, you're going to see those elements represented. And I think the easiest one is Victor. Victor is her id. The id is your wants, your base desires. And without going like really deep into it, which you absolutely can, what Victor does when he goes off, she accidentally hurts him. You know, the way she did her kid, the way she did Tommy. Interesting.
Yeah.
Without intending to, it was a complete accident what she did to Victor, and also what she did to Tommy. Interesting. What Victor says after she appears to him in the second loop is, I won't tell anyone.
Yes.
That's the first thing, is I won't tell anybody. She's acting weird, and he says, I'll keep the secret. That is her desire. Her whole desire is she doesn't want anyone to know what she's done, which, in the real world term is, beating and abusing and probably killing her kid. So Victor is saying, I will keep your secret. No one will know. I think the ego, which is the conception of self in broad terms, is Sally and Downey. It's kind of what she wants to be. She wants to be in a couple, but they're basically telling her things she doesn't want to hear. They are criticizing her with things she knows about herself, that she's low class, that she's poor, that she's stressed, that they want that, probably Greg would be more into their friend than her because she's not suitable, that she's got a son who's R-worded. Those are what she thinks about herself that she's uncomfortable with, that she needs to take out, she can't face up to. And ultimately, Greg is a superego. The superego is the more rational, detached component of the conception of self. And this scene here, why I screen cap this, is where Greg steps out of the stuff and just gives her loads of rational talk and basically says, you realize this isn't happening, right? You realize this is a ridiculous scenario. Ships just don't come out of nowhere. There should be a skipper. None of this makes sense. He's a superego who's detached from the action, telling her that. How's that for some crazy talk?
Just when I thought I was big brain and clever, you just have to smack me down, don't you?
Oh, do you want something else about Victor?
Go on.
All right. So, there are loads of these, but when I was watching the director's commentary, I just picked this up. Victor's wearing a red and blue check shirt. What's Tommy wearing?
Oh, God,
in the
damn
locket? Red and blue check shirt.
Oh, is he? I didn't notice that.
See,
I've been finding these everywhere.
Now, there's me thinking that this was some sort of supernatural, loop, man. I am absolutely convinced now that this is a psychotic episode, and because the one thing that was sort of holding me back from that was trying to sort of identify how the supporting cast were linked to it, and I think what you've just said there just absolutely nails it.
Well, thank you. I mean,
I'm going to hold on to my pride and be a fence sitter and say, well, it could be both.
Oh, it absolutely could. There's stuff that doesn't match super well, like Heather doesn't map super well into this. And the point that if it was just a psychological thing, they wouldn't need to throw in the purgatory imagery. If it was just a psychological thing, they wouldn't need to throw in the Bermuda Triangle aspects. Like, they've deliberately made it not one or the other, but all about a kind of emotional journey for the main character.
So hang on, Heather's the one who disappears, like, pretty much from the boat going capsized.
Yeah, she gets thrown out. I think they go on below deck, and when it's getting capsized, she gets sucked out and you never see her again.
Yeah, so couldn't she be like an extension of was it Greg and Sally? Yeah, she could be like the Greg and Sally. She could still fit in that area, surely.
They were even trying to set her up with Greg near the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as almost like a desirable mate, almost as like a because of her own personal situation, she might not see herself as someone who might be desirable to men because of the the emotional baggage that she brings. Whereas you've got this young woman, no children, no commitments, essentially she could just be like so she could just be like an extension of or a projection of what she would like to see herself as without the life that she has.
Well, you're onto something there. I mean, that does work, because if she's what's her name, Heather, is meant to get set up with Greg, but Greg's like, I'm not interested. So it's kind of flattering to Jess that she's like, how can I say? She's my brain is awful. The only thing it's coming up with is rough trade, which is not the. That's not. She's like the nerdy girl who's meant to be done up for prom in all the early 2000s movies. You know, she's the underdog romantic interest. Why does my brain come up with rough trade? That is not helpful. Damn it. Oh no. What do you reckon to this? Yeah, maybe Heather's. Who should like to be like the ideal?
That's what I'm getting at. I think Heather's kind of like a representation as to what she would like to be.
Yeah, I think she also gives them a little bit of an excuse, because you remember the first time they're going around the ship and they encounter weird stuff. They're like, "Oh, maybe it's Heather."
She can be a bit of a diversionary character, a little red herring for the rest of her.
We have got some approval. So Fez is saying Dog in the Night is not doing a bad job of portraying autism. Yeah, I just don't remember. I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was quite moving. I thought the play was very good, actually. Good to know it's got the approval. And I like this as well. We've seen quite a few of these stories recently. It's kind of rare. I gather there's a film called Time Crimes, which is also quite similar.
I've not watched Edge of Tomorrow, but that sounds quite similar to that plot as well, from what I've heard.
Yeah, Edge of Tomorrow as well. And there's a Doctor Who episode late in the Capaldi era, which is very... Do you remember the name of it? Chat. Do any of you remember the name?
I don't remember the name. It's from season 9. I think it's right after Clara leaves the show almost for good. And it's one of the only Capaldi episodes I actually quite enjoyed, despite the fact that Stephen Moffat has a terrible, terrible habit of making every aspect of the show that he introduced now the most important and the most important aspect of Doctor Who that's ever happened. So with that, he purposefully made it so that Peter Capaldi's Doctor had stayed Peter Capaldi's Doctor longer than anybody else's, because it's implied that he's spent, billions of years potentially in that purgatory he found himself in. Sorry, I don't want to go off on Moffat.
No, it's okay. Moffat deserves it.
He's just so hateable. I hate him.
That's the only episode of the Capaldi era I've seen. I just saw so many people saying, I hate it.
It's not representative of the quality of the rest of it. It's really not representative. It's like the one good one.
Yeah. All right, chat. We're waiting for that episode name, if you remember. But in the meantime, it is that story of a loop that repeats, making just a tiny bit of progress. But I think what we notice in all of those stories is ultimately optimism. Like, ultimately, you do get to change it. It's this, how can I say, it's the, as Thomas Sowell would call it, it's a little bit of the vision of the anointed. It's the progressive vision. It's, you can improve, you can make these changes. And I think this, I wouldn't say it's like conservative or anything. It's not the benighted vision in Thomas Sowell terms, but it is more realistic.
It's a constrained vision. The fact that no matter what she does, if you were to look at it from a broader sense of human nature, the way that Sowell characterizes the constrained vision as meaning you recognize that human nature cannot be changed, or certainly cannot be changed even in the course of 2,000 years, then it would certainly line up with that quite well. I was waiting for the moment when she broke through the mirror to the other side of the reflection, destroyed the fractured version of herself, and happily she never did.
Yeah, you phrase that perfectly. Yeah, it's constrained by human nature. That's the tragedy of it. This is what makes it tragic.
I think somebody's got it right. I think it's Heaven Sent is the episode of Doctor Who.
Yes, that rings a bell.
Castle by the Time Lords, shrouded creature pursues the Doctor. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, April Ethereal. That is the name I was after. Thank you. You mentioned that mirror shot. I thought that was beautiful, where you actually go through the mirror. Nightmare to do, apparently. They did the classic thing of you have a body double facing away from the camera, and Melissa George, the actress, is facing through. There is no mirror. The grime that was on the mirror is CGI'd in, and that's how you're able to go through the mirror. But there's a really cool thing that came off that. I will just get a photo of this, because since we follow her through the mirror, the film actually reverses a couple of shots, and I only noticed that on the rewatch. So the shot of, the shot that inspired the whole film, someone looking at you from the bow of the ship. Yeah, once we go through the mirror, this reverses.
I hadn't noticed that. It's very clever.
I hadn't noticed that either. Wow.
Yeah, it's such a cool detail. Absolutely love it. There's so much. I'll just show a few more of these if you want.
Yeah, do.
Just tiny details that are so cute. So there's this. When we're talking about the connection between the boat is really just her house. We've got the fact that the boat has this triple mirror here in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
What's in her bedroom?
Triple mirror.
Dun dun dun! Triple mirror. Triple mirror.
Nice.
You love to see it. And my favourite one, we just had this up.
Do you know the photo frame as well had the mother and the kid? If you go back.
Oh, hang on, let me get that up.
Can't tell, but
you just want to rag on the kid's hair.
Oh no, she's wearing a necklace, but I was going to say it looks like she. Okay, ignore me. I thought.
I think she takes the necklace from the corpse of this version of herself when she beats her to death.
Yeah.
Oh, she does. She does. This final version. Here we have the mean version of her, the scarier version, the one that's much tougher.
The one who knows what she's doing.
Yeah. When this is the one, you notice the blood pattern is exactly the same as the one that dies in the car crash. Although she's meant to be the one who was murdered in the house and then stuffed in the trunk. Christopher Smith said that's the idea that what Jess is trying to do is kill the mean version of herself, kill the bad mom version that's totally not her. It's someone else, and that's what that's meant to represent. I love this stuff. I love it so much. Such a cool detail.
There was something I was going to say, but I've completely forgotten now. I hate when that happens.
I know. It's there's so many places you can take this, isn't there?
I hate that.
Yeah. There's I'm
just gonna say 3-0 at the moment. I just feel that space myself. 3-0.
You've just been watching the football this whole time, haven't you?
I won't lie. I've got it on. It's in the background. It's in the background.
Years, have you been listening in this whole time, being spoiled on the whole film?
Years, no. Years, we warned you so much. Okay, well, I think you can still enjoy it. You can still enjoy it knowing what's happened. You'll see all these little details. Like we're talking about how how inescapable this is, how it is in her nature. She cannot change this. And from that, you get the signs of this even when she comes back. So before she even snaps at the kid, Harry, there's the fact that it's her looking through the window that scares Tommy in the first place, which makes him knock off the paint.
Which is what causes the mean version of her to slap him. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all her fault throughout. I shouldn't say her fault, but it's in the constrained vision.
Her actions.
Yeah.
Whether intentional or not.
Exactly. Oh. It's so savage. And so when she goes in and just caves her own head in.
I loved how blunt that whole scene was. She doesn't say a word, just bang, done. Crack the egg.
Yeah. I don't know if you think, I might be off with this, but I just kind of read it as the amount that she can remember changes quite a lot. And I think probably alternates between whether she had her head caved in as the mean version or whether she jumped off as she did in the sort of less mean version.
That's what it seems to me.
I just kind of get the feeling like she cycled through, she kind of reached the maximum that she remembers, and now she's just absolutely brutal. So she doesn't mess around. She's probably killed so many people at this point that she just decides, there's no preamble here. After we've seen her sort of struggle to take out any versions of herself previously, this time she's so practiced, she's so determined. This is all about her kid. So yeah, she can just come in and absolutely muller herself in front of the window.
I really appreciate that pause game, by the way.
Yeah, that was the third attempt I had at getting this pause, and I just thought, I'm going to have to go with that. She's just going to have to derp face.
It is a good one.
It's one of the sort of fewer moments. Smith did talk about how this was a bit less gory than his other stuff. I don't know if you missed that. Did you want more gore from this?
I was happy with the amount that we got, to be honest.
Yeah, I've not watched this other film, so I can't compare, but on its own, I thought that this film had an appropriate amount of gore. I felt like the subject matter didn't lend itself to overtly gory scenes. It was doing something more than just trying to shock you in that way. In fact, if it had been gory, I think that probably would have distracted from the deeper meanings.
Yeah, I like that. I think what we tended to get was just the gore we got was just memorable. Like memorable imagery, like the way Mean Jess just dispassionately starts slicing them up in room 237 or the pile of Sally's.
Yeah.
I was so tempted to get I thought, shall I get an image of that? And it kind of fits my policy of I don't tend to show the what's
The
a
money
good word?
shots.
That's the exact phrase I was going to not say.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no. It doesn't have to be. I mean, it doesn't have to be a dirty-minded thing, right? You turn that into a dirty-minded saying.
Me? This is a family-friendly stream, Harry.
And it's a family-friendly saying. Just don't think of it that way. There you go. That's my advice.
Okay, good. Yeah, I try not to show those big payoff shots just because I kind of think you need to see them in context. A lot of stuff will just like splash the really known stuff all over the place, and I think you get a bit desensitized to it.
Yeah, and I think that's a point as well, which is if the film had been gorier up to that point, that scene itself would have been a much less effective.
I
loved it for its sheer brutality.
Yeah.
Like the scenes where stuff did happen, like you know, didn't need like intestines hanging out and all that stuff. You know, it was just like the way that she dispatched of Greg in that room, just like going to town on him. I mean, that worked brilliantly for me.
Yeah, just the quick slash. It was so businesslike.
Yeah. Do you mean Downey?
Downey, that's the one. Downey, I beg your pardon. I will say, I was kind of wondering about this because obviously by the end of the film, I know that I know that you sort of mentioned that there could be two versions of Jess sort of going back on the boat, you know, like a good and evil version. I don't know if that's the case.
I don't think it's a good or an evil version, but a version of her that doesn't remember the loops and a version of her that does remember the loops, and maybe variations in between.
Here's where I'm at with it. I think that she goes on, obviously when she gets to the dock, I think, you know, she knows that she's got to go back on the boat, and I know that I think she knows that she needs to do everything. But obviously where she's had the car crash, you know, her brain's all frazzled, and so, you know, she goes on the boat, and then she sleeps for those 2 hours, doesn't she? And then she wakes up and she says that she's had a bad dream, and so I'm wondering whether she has kind of chalked it all off at that point, and then as the events unfold in the film, she, you know, you're literally just playing it off from the beginning, you know, like she's got the whole deja vu, you know, rooms look familiar but she can't quite put her finger on it. So I think there's almost like a...
See, I understand where you're coming from. That is certainly an interpretation you could take, but it doesn't explain how, on that second loop when she's still trying to save them, why the version of herself, why the Jess that's, you know, ends up leading Downey to the room, misleading them, trying to trick them into thinking that she's the Jess that they saw earlier. It
just
doesn't
feel
explain
like
why she's so much more brutal
I
than
just feel like
the Jess we see at the end. When we see our Jess, the one we see from the beginning, go through the loop, by the time she gets to the third way around,
I think
she seems still upset and nervous about what she has to do.
yeah,
Whereas
I
that
see.
Jess that we see is very, very just brutal about it.
This sort of goes back to my "all roads lead to Rome" comment from earlier. I think that we're seeing this particular, we follow one Jess throughout the film, so we see her particular journey, but there's so many different variations of her. I think that perhaps that those Jesses have made like, different choices along the way, and so we're seeing those Jesses at different points.
Perhaps.
Do you know what I mean? Like I can again, I'm not writing off what's been said, but I just feel like this is kind of
Well, it's the fact that we only get one clear-cut beginning to end loop with one particular Jess that makes it so ambiguous in the first place. So there are many different interpretations you could take of that.
I mean, for all we know, this could have been that particular variation who dispatched Downey and Sally. You know, she could have been on that boat for a hell of a lot longer, and that's why she was so cold about it. You know.
Perhaps.
I don't know.
There is something that backs up your idea, actually. Do you remember the shot? They go into the dining room and there's a lovely banquet. And then one time she goes in and it's really mouldy.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yes.
right, yeah.
And you never see that again. But so the idea of that was, I think, to throw variety in there. Like you can get these there's multiple loops going on and she can cross over into different ones.
This is what
so she ended up in a really advanced loop because she wandered a bit far somehow. She took weird choices and ended up in a really weird advanced loop.
Well, it's like and it's like when she's in the middle of the first loop, I think, and they see the writing in blood on the mirror. You know, she ends up writing that same message on the same mirror later on in the film, so it's not there. And so I think time. I would say time definitely isn't moving in a straight line in this film. You know, it's very Pulp Fiction-y, if you will.
Yeah, I like that idea that sometimes the loop that you're in will just throw a curveball at you. Something that you're expecting to happen just is subtly different in some way. That's quite nice.
Yeah, and I was thinking like how you explain it just the difference in response, and then I thought there's a shot we see Mean Jess get killed, right? So Jess we follow, the more gentle Jess, if you will, she sees the Mean Jess killed, like just brutally hammered, and I thought, okay, then. So I thought, what if Mean Jess saw the version where it's a more gentle combat and she survives, and she, in response to that, when she sees the version that doesn't die, she decides that if she just fought a bit harder, if she was more direct, she'd have won. I don't know if I worded that well.
I get what you're getting at. I don't necessarily know if I would pick that up.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work out how we explain it, but also the idea that Jess has just been stuck around a while, like crossing over multiple loops and just deciding she has to be incredibly efficient. One of the really dark things in this way, just while we're on it, about them all deciding to kill off everyone, because that's what resets the loop. That's not what resets the loop. The loop happens when Jess jumps off the ship.
Off the boat.
She doesn't need to kill anyone.
No, that's it. Yeah, exactly. And do you know what? Again, going back to this evil Jess, maybe, you know, she's been on this boat for too damn long because, you know, she's got very good at killing. And you see it. I mean, how proficient is she at getting rid of Downey and Sally? You know, that's not something that they look like kills from an experienced killer at that point. So, you know, God knows how long she'd been doing it and practicing, and, you know, she needed to lose that fight, because essentially what you see, with our Jess the first time round, you're seeing the same Jess at the end of that loop, essentially succeeding and getting off of the boat, as you mentioned.
Yeah, she lands off. She also, when she dreams, she dreams of being off the boat. She kind of gets that foreshadowing as well.
Oh, there's a lot of foreshadowing in this.
Yeah, and then yes, as you say, she wakes up with the crabs. The swimsuit is a bit. Oh, that was phrased bad. That was a bit scary movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't like that scene.
Remember, kids, you can't just leave shampoo in. It's been so long. We've gone so long without referencing scary movie. It needed to come back. Oh dear. Yes, she wakes up surrounded by crustaceans on the beach.
That's still not good.
And it's like she's been. It's almost like she's been washed clean. It's improbable that the jumpsuit's off her, but it's more like leaving has sort of symbolically washed her clean. But which is why she can have that fresh start. Oh dear. See, we've been. Oh dear.
Gotcha.
Oh dear. Terrible. I mean, we've been very nice about this. Do you have anything that you would criticize about this movie?
The only thing that I would criticize about the film is that the budget, as much as Christopher Smith did a wonderful job with what little money that he had, and most of the film does not look cheap, the actual scene where the storm hits and they get capsized, that's where the budget showed the most for me, because it was very clear they were on a tiny little set throwing water at them with some kind of water cannon off camera. But that's the only time I really noticed the budget. So it's only a very minor thing, and that scene's probably like a minute long anyway, so it doesn't really affect anything. It's only didn't take me out of the film.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the season finale of Dexter season 8.
Oh no, that's
Not
very
even once.
cruel. That's
Not
so
even
cruel.
once.
Don't even say that.
I'm sticking to it. Although, admittedly, to this day, I still haven't watched the entire episode.
I mean,
because I refuse to.
Yeah, don't. I've watched it, and my missus started watching the whole show for the first time a while back, and she got through like most of season 2, and I was like, you might as well, just when you get to the end of season 4,
Good man.
That's a good point.
That's kind of all you need.
I love that you said that. Me and my wife are absolutely on point with you there. Seasons 1 through 4, brilliant. It goes completely downhill from season 5.
Just to derail just very quickly, I think just to wrap that up, season 5 is okay, but nowhere near as good. Season 6 is almost season 8 levels of bad. Season 7 really got my hopes back up because it was actually decent. Then season 8 is one of the worst abominations I've ever watched.
You gotta know when to bail.
I know. That's why season 4, at that point, you're clean. You're clean. That's a nice, clean-cut exit for the show. And I have not gone back and watched that new version.
You should. It's ending is crap. But
you can never stick the landing.
I will. Yeah, exactly. I wasn't happy with the ending at all. But it is actually all right. It's not bad.
Glowing praise.
It was made by it was produced by the producer of the original 3 series, the first 3 series, I think it was.
I think it was the first 4, and then he left.
Sorry, yes,
and then it went downhill immediately.
Quite right. Yeah, the first 4 seasons. So he does come. I can't remember his bloody name now, but yeah, I know he came back for it, and you can tell because the quality shows, like the understanding of Dexter as a character, is evident in his portrayal. Some nice little cameos too.
Sorry, what? Sorry, I've just looked at the chat. White Heart loved all the sneaky Shrek references.
You gotta watch. You gotta watch out for this. They'll be telling you about Shrek 8. Don't believe a word of it.
Yeah, that bit when Greg turned round to Downey and said, "Get out of my swamp," had me rolling on the floor, man.
And then cut his throat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It just derailed. We're watching. This happened on EFAP as well when they're covering Final Destination, and the fact that there's an Agent Shrek, they couldn't get past it. It's a reference to Max Schreck from Nosferatu, the actor in Nosferatu playing Count Orlok.
You
But
mean
now
the 2000 DreamWorks animated classic Shrek? Was that the sound of a keyboard being upturned?
Basically, yeah. You can't. Shrek is ruined now. It's gone. It's absolutely gone.
It is. It's all ogre.
Oh. Donkey, more like Donkey Punch, right? Someone already referenced Donkey Punch. I'm not saying it's a good movie, but it's not as bad as it could have been.
I've not watched it.
Donkey punching here. Fun fact: donkey punching Gujarati is gaderufat.
Oh dear! How do you know this?
Is that when I used to work in a bank? I used to have a couple of Asian people that I used to work with, and I'd just seen the movie and I was talking about it to my mates, and I said, I won't say his name, but I was like, how do you say donkey punch in Gujarati? And he was like, it's gaderufat. I was like, okay, I'll remember that.
Kept that one in your back pocket for podcast anecdotes.
Exactly, yep.
Oh, you'll have to see it. TCG, how about yourself? Any criticism? Oh, by the way, Harry, on the thing about the storm, there is a making of the storm video on the Blu-ray and confirmed it was in a tank. It was just in a water tank with buckets of water.
I thought so.
Through.
It was sadly quite obvious.
Yeah, awkward.
You can only work with the money you've got, right?
It is. What can you do? TCG. Any criticisms? Because we've been so nice about this film. We've got to be balanced, right? We got to nitpick something.
Honestly, not enough tits. If you're gonna have a masked killer with a duffel bag over their head with two little eye holes, trying to pull off your best Friday the 13th impression before he gets the infamous hockey mask, you got to throw some baps out there. We love
there
our burger
was
baps
plenty. Jess was running around most of this film in a very revealing tank top, so you got something.
There is that. However, we didn't get full exposure.
Not enough.
Yeah, we didn't get full exposure, and I'm sorry. It's not for sexual purposes. I promise you, it's just a prerequisite of horror.
It's not because Jess was quite a good-looking lady.
Had nothing to do with that, especially when there was more than one of them on screen.
Are you saying there were some opportunities that were not followed up?
Yeah, opportunity knockers.
Now that would have been a very big twist. Family friendly, guys. Family friendly.
Oh dear. If you want that sort of thing, by the way, just the tank top thing, can I recommend Fall? It's one of the videos I recorded and have not been able to edit, but there's a character who's dressed like that with a lot of, shall we say, Route 1 tactics, as certain rug merchants would reference.
Can I just say, I love that you guys covered who would you do on your channel.
Well, that was Dan. Do you want to know the funny story of that? Dan had no idea. He had no idea what he was going to do, and he just went on Twitter. And he's like, "Right, I'm just doing who would you do? That's what I'm doing." And he pulled it out of his rear end, and it was one of his most popular segments ever.
I loved it. I did see AA's reactions initially on Twitter.
It was good.
It was like I refused to believe that this was a thing until I saw it for myself. I was like,
no.
AA's influence stretches on further than he ever thought it would.
I genuinely saw the thumbnail, right, and it was just had the WWYD, and I was like, no.
And the classic Jennifer Connelly images.
Yes,
the undefeated Connelly.
Oof. I was like, no. And
to be fair, with a back catalogue like that, I understand why.
I mean, I don't agree with AO on too much, bless him, but I will say I do enjoy it when he goes on one of these little journeys. I love his wrestling and I love the old competition, and I love that he's like into Splice the 2.
Oh yeah, you just reminded me actually. I think Clash of Champions WWE was last night.
It was, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll check the results on that.
I might watch that.
Can I just
See?
point out that you all fell for Dan's shameless subterfuge in covering that? Dan had a deeper plan than you know.
Oh, did he? Because I thought Dan was just a dirty old man.
No.
Was
Well,
I wrong?
he is.
Isn't that what you say to him when you come into the office? Dan, the dirty old man.
That's when we want him to leave. We start
Oh,
shouting
right.
at him.
But okay, who was he simping for most in that episode? Right?
Oh, what's her name?
Sybil Shepherd.
Sybil Shepherd, yeah.
Yeah, he was endlessly simping for her.
There's a particular screen grab we've got of that, of her, a very nice picture of her with Dan really throwing the eyes. It's like he spotted her across the bar. He's got a drink in hand. He knows what he's got to do.
Look, he was very obvious in that, and frankly, it's obvious to me that he was doing that as a cover story to distract and detract from the rumors of his Priti Patel appreciation. He's just trying to kill that rumor.
Oh, I thought he was just trying to get some word out there for any non-participants in Who Would You Do to bombard it with votes in favour of Sybil Shepherd.
Oh, that
Maybe
as
there's
well. But
layers to this.
He's trying to, stop the Patel train. Everyone knows about his preferences in that region.
I thought it might be to put off the fact that Dan has a quite severe case of yellow fever, but that's neither here nor there.
See, these are the rumors that Dan is trying to quash, and it will not fool us. Absolutely not.
We know the deepest lore.
Exactly. You can see there's always a bigger fish, and there's always a bigger plot to uncover.
Fez, it was all for Sybil, and it worked. She's back in the Queen's Cup.
Oh, nice.
Yes. By popular demand. Elite theory in action.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, you love to see it. Okay, so Chris. Oh yeah, I was shilling Fall for the costumes. Yeah, there's a character who dresses exactly how you would want her to, TCG, and she's an Instagram thought. But there's a brilliant moment where she sort of takes off the ridiculous push-up bra and says, "Oh, that's so uncomfortable." It's like she's admitting that she was doing that using the Route 1 tactics for Instagram follows. And I thought, oh, that's a lovely bit of character work. She knew she was dressing in an incredibly provocative fashion. And I thought, oh, that's a nice bit of writing. Well done, Fall. Spoilers, by the way, guys. I do have more in the video, but I haven't had any time to edit it. I will get to it. But yeah, it was a nice bit of character work. So if that's what you're after, Fall is a good little movie. Also,
I'll put it on the list.
Yeah, it is. It's not too much interpretation. There's a little bit of nice stuff in there that's worth it. I'd also note that Melissa George here chose her own costume. Oh, and I just wanted to point out a few things. Melissa George, who plays Jess, I think might be really underappreciated because she happens to be. Oh, hang on. I didn't notice this. She's in Mulholland Drive.
Wait, is she what's her face from Mulholland Drive?
She's Camilla
Mrs.
Rhodes.
Oh my god, she's Camilla.
Oh, that's weird.
Is she actually? I did not know that. What's her name again? Melissa
George. I was just popping in to say I really liked her in Derailed.
Oh,
I really liked her in
familiar.
30 Days of Night.
I think it's because she was
brilliant
about.
one.
I think it's because she was about 10 years, 8 to 10 years older, because obviously Mulholland Drive was filmed across a weird time period. It's because she's a bit older in this than that, but I thought she looked familiar. God, that's such a weird coincidence.
God, could you imagine Harrian's reaction if he was here?
It's not that Harrian is barred from the podcast, but he does need to learn to appreciate Lynch a little more.
He does. We need to.
She was in the
Orange
American version of Coupling. Oh no!
I've never watched the American. That sounds like it would be awful.
Oh, it was unaired. It's an unaired pilot that was famously
It was
bad.
so bad, even the Americans didn't release it.
Yeah. Oh damn, that's terrible.
Oh god,
Okay,
I used to watch Coupling.
Oh dear.
I love you just type if you Google search Coupling, the first search, to be fair, is the TV series in the images section, and then it's just loads of pipe couplings after that.
Love it. Fez, yeah, that is indeed the one, the vertigo inducing movie. Yeah, it's pretty decent, you know. It's pretty decent. Well, okay. I had my own criticism, I suppose, of this, because I do need to find something to nitpick. I could, I'd say some of the CGI isn't 100%, but again, low budget, 2008. You know what you can do. Well, this was all filmed and done in 2008 and released in 2009. I guess I could say on one version, the other characters who aren't Jess aren't massively explored, and you do come to see them as just sort of not super important on further viewings. I don't know how big a problem that is. Christopher Smith himself did say that they do feel extremely tertiary, but I don't know. That's about the best criticism I can do, to be honest. I really love this movie. I'm unashamedly in favour of it. So these are those sort of minor criticisms, I guess. I suppose also there's some of the logic, some of the mechanics of how it all works. I would struggle to explain. Some of it I can. Like maybe we hopefully convinced you that we could explain all of it, but you know, some of it, some minor aspects I think we would struggle with.
Gabriel Williams has asked if it's a trans allegory.
Ooh.
Gay reading.
I don't know. Two people saying trans allegory for triangle? Really? Okay, hang on, let me try. You got the battle of the self, you got the conflict over I can't do it. I don't think it's there.
She does
She's conflicted with her identity, I suppose.
She does look like it's not me. It looks like me, but it's not me.
Herself once or twice in the film.
Yes.
She can't herself.
I don't know, folks. You know, whatever you think about all that stuff, I'm like, if you've seen my second video on the Matrix, you know, I do a good reading of V for Vendetta with a trans allegory. Whatever you think of that stuff, you can, you know, you say there's a reading there. And you know, I'm very happy to throw in a gay reading, facetious or not. Sometimes it's just there for fun. But,
I feel like this is
yeah.
I feel like this is a psyop.
Yeah, I think
I'm not seeing one if I'm honest.
Nah, I mean, I'd be depressed if someone tried it, you know. Oh dear. And no, I don't see it, folks. I'm afraid this has got enough going on without trying to add that in. Oh dear. Well, we have gone over 2 hours now. I mean, is there anything you guys are sort of raring to say to get in? I know in the course of the discussion, sometimes there can be things that are missed out. If you've got something that we maybe moved on past a bit quick and want to cover quickly, now's a good time.
Dr. Prepper mentions the lack of diversity in the film. I would. Do you know what? I didn't even really think about it until you mentioned it there.
There's a couple of folk in the crowd at the end, and that is it.
I noticed the lack of diversity, but then again, this is a pre-2010 film, so I was kind of expecting it, although it is honestly pleasant to not have anything just shoved in my face.
Mm.
That's what she said.
For God's sakes. This is what I mean. I'm not dirty. You've just got dirty minds.
Yeah, I mean, one thing about Christopher Smith is he has not done the message. He's not been given the treatment the way some directors have. Sorry?
Is his Twitter clean?
Oh no, I haven't checked. I'll be honest, I don't. I checked Mike Flanagan's Twitter, and well, I probably didn't need to with the way his films have developed, but I have not looked up Christopher Smith's social media. In an interview I heard on a podcast, he did make a few comments that made me think, you're like about 11 years on from this, I suppose. Something that read a bit Guardian, so I don't know. When we cover his later films, maybe we'll start to see some of that sink in, but at the moment, ain't seeing it.
I think the Enriep has just
Oh.
nailed the gay reading. I suppose gay reading would be all the dead seamen on the ship.
Oh dear.
Wow.
You can tell we've been going over 2 hours now.
I think we
delirious
should.
now. I think I need to have a nap and wake up on a boat.
I've no idea how Mauler does it.
Oh dear. White Hart. Well, okay. So I've actually only seen Creep, Severance, and this, and I've seen them several times. I have an absolute blind spot for all the other stuff he's done. I should also mention he's not just done horror. He's kind of a guy who obviously has an interest, but he was so successful in horror that it was easier for him to get money to do more horror. But he made Creep, and then he was asked what he wanted to do, and he said, "I wanted to make a Christmas movie." So he's like Wes Craven, really, except a lot happier to do horror. Wes Craven actually was fairly annoyed about sort of troubled over how he got stuck as a horror director, unfortunately. But Christopher Smith did get to make his Christmas movie. It was called Get Santa. He currently does a sort of a crime thriller series called Temple. And he's shaken it up, but I've really only seen his early stuff. And that is why I want to come back and do a second Christopher Smith arc. Because I know he's had at least 3 others we would want to do. That's, let me get this right. That is Black Death. It is The Banishing. And Consecration is his 2023 movie, which will be interesting to. Is Detour horror? Detour is a thriller, which he did in 2016. So we got a lot to cover, and I think we'll do a second Christopher Smith arc. All right. It's getting silly now. It's getting silly in chat. The Shrek 8 talk. Oh dear, terrible. All right, let's keep it sensible and centered, folks. We will do our closing thoughts and scores now. And that means you too, chat. Chat, who I also noticed voted 100% for the Purgatory reading. So the chat agrees with you two very much. Let's get your scores in. It is the standard out of 12 burgers format. And TCG, if we could go to you for the closing thoughts and score.
Yeah, I'm going to go 10 out of 12 burgers for this one.
Nice.
Very, very strong movie. Very, very, very decent theme in it. I really love the ambiguity, because the number of readings that we've managed to obtain from this discussion, like I say, it's been about 3-4 different types of readings, all of which brings its own sort of unique perspective into this film. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend it to anybody who is interested in seeing this film if they haven't already. It's a decent little cast. 10 out of 12 burgers. Not as much ketchup as the previous two, but definitely we are giving that burger a good old Angus beef beating before it goes in with some. We're not going to put any cheese in though. There is absolutely no cheese in this film. Just a plain old massive burger.
Nice. So can I take it like it? How would you rank the 3 Christopher Smith films we've seen so far?
I would probably put this one up top actually, followed by Creep, and then what was the name of the one we watched last week?
Severance.
Severance, yes. I'd probably rank it in that order. Severance 3, Creep 2, and then this one number 1. I really liked it. I don't really know what to say. I really liked it. It was very enjoyable, even at 360p.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, we should point out you can see it free on Prime with ads. You can see it free on YouTube with ads. So
I don't know
in
why
my
I didn't check
experience,
Prime.
the Prime didn't actually show any ads through the whole viewing, so that didn't even become a factor.
I'm really annoyed that I didn't check it on Prime, because I do have Prime, and noticed it was on YouTube, and I was like, "Ah, yeah, I'll do."
Nice. Oh no. You know, Mr.
God.
GB.
Thank you, Mr. Gently Benevolent. Despite the fact that I have been described as a Spice Carl, which is my favourite way to be described, I appreciate the compliment nonetheless.
Yes. Luckily, you can watch this on the replay. And if you are watching this on the replay, hi, I'm so sorry. I once again forgot to say hi at the start. But if you're listening to this, you're clearly one of the veterans and are the most deserving of recognition. Oh, I need to make a note to say hi to the replay folks.
You know what else we haven't done this stream? We haven't said happy birthday to Richard Orett in the chat. Happy birthday!
It's our last
Richard.
chance in May to say happy birthday, Richard. We got you last week, but let's make up for again. Okay, hang on. So I got. I don't think we had Edwell. So all right, nice, good. I think that's a 10 is very respectable. TCG, very respectable. I'm not going to argue that at all. Harry, how about yourself? Closing
Sorry,
thoughts
not my
and
microphone
score,
over.
please.
Me, I was pleasantly surprised with this. I have to say, I went in without much expectations. The poster and artwork for the film, the way it's presented through the marketing, did not make me think that it was going to be as deep or interesting or engaging as it was. But really, I appreciated the twisty-turny loop narrative. I think it'll be really rewarding on a rewatch. And that is the one thing I'm most surprised about is in the course of this discussion, it's actually improved my opinion of the film and really made me quite eager for another rewatch so that I can really dig deeper into what's actually going on in the film. So I will go a little bit higher than TCG and give it 10.5 out of 12, which is honestly a much higher score than I was expecting to give when we began this. And as far as burgers go, it's perfectly shaped. It's not too complicated, but not too simple. It's got just the right amount of ketchup, no frills on the side. It just does what it needs to do, and it does it damn well.
Nice.
I just popped it in the private chat as you were saying, but yeah, no, mate, that's well said. I actually really liked the film more off the back of this discussion. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Oh, I love to hear it. I really do. Oh, that's so good.
And what about you?
Well, I was just thinking when you say about watching more stuff, I was just wondering, would you go for Creep and Severance?
Well, after watching this, if they are of similar quality, then this has certainly got me interested in this director's filmography.
I think one of the things about Smith is these films are so different. So if you watched Severance or Creep, you would not believe it's the same director. It's like wildly different.
Well, as long as they're of the same quality.
Yeah, they are simpler films, and even though they're a bit more like in the genre, they are done to a high standard. So, yeah. Oh, and we got another score in. Yeah, interesting. Fair point there, wifey. Fair point. 10 out of 12. It doesn't go for the. I think you know what that feeds into the closing thoughts. I'll do. This is an 11 for me. Obviously, no Tony Todd, no 12. You know the rules. You've got to add the Tony Todd modifier, the Toddifier. So 11 out of 12 is a solid score. It's layered, it's deep, but even when it's given you its clever premise, it doesn't rest on that. The second you're in that second loop and you think you know what's going on, it gives you a twist and surprises you to make it much more complex. So your brain is going, trying to work out the logic, and you can put thought into it, and I think it'll pretty much hold up. There are one or two questions I have, but the logic holds up and it's worth interrogating. The symbolism holds up and it's worth interrogating. You have all these interpretations you can make, and you're not forced into one. The ambiguity is refreshing and not sort of in a, horrific Jordan Peele way to help you cram a message in. It's about delivering on the emotional truth of a character, and that is what ultimately makes this amazing. This isn't, while this film does land some beautiful, gory horror imagery that is, the Pile of Sallies is absolutely amazingly nightmarish, almost like Dante level imagery, certainly a sort of, the Pit of Hell and Fatal Frame 2 style imagery. The real horror at the heart of this is that accessible horror, the really tough stuff, the psychological human nature horror about how flawed we are as people, how despite us wanting to do our best, we do things we aren't proud of, and we, would rather, kill everyone than have them see it, because, we are fallen people, we are fallen creatures, and it's psychologically horrific. This touches on that essential truth of human nature, and it expresses it wonderfully. So it's a very deep bit of horror, and that is why it earns a very strong 11 burgers. So yeah, that was I could maybe go 11 and a half. Perfect ketchup, tiny little bit of spice as well, because it doesn't go for the progressive messaging at all, where so many other stories trying to do this have done that. And of course, no cheese whatsoever. Avoided doing the sort of Marvel tension releasing jokes. You love to see it. Definitely one of my favorites. Yeah, I'm really pleased with the scores. We're seeing loads of 10s. We're seeing, I think we saw a couple of 9s, an 11. I love seeing this get appreciated. And I really liked hearing your discussion of it, guys. Like you, that was lovely to hear.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, no, I really, like I said, I've really enjoyed this chat, and I really enjoyed this film. So, I appreciate the fact that you've made me aware of this one.
Absolute pleasure. As I said,
I'm also grateful as well. Thank you.
It's a delight. And as I say, hopefully this gets people looking at Christopher Smith and realizing, oh wait, hey, that's all the same guy. What the heck? Because yes, it is all the same guy. And what indeed the heck? One guy making completely wildly different horror movies, but all of them a heck of a lot better than you might expect. And this being his standout for me.
I'm gonna do one last one last reading. Is Jess a self-insert for our good old director buddy? Different versions of the same person.
Oh, maybe you can go rogue on that one. Do a video on it. I know.
Might have to.
I will be returning to this to do the Freudian psychoanalytic deep dive. Remember, you don't have to believe in Freud. You don't have to believe psychoanalytic analysis holds up. What's important is that the writer and director Christopher Smith believed in it and wrote the story to tell that tale. So yeah, I think that is everything. A good reminder here. Yes, everyone like the stream. Replay people, hello. If you are here, you are absolute champs. Like the stream and help get the word out. I am so very close to 4,000 subs. I would love to get over that line because a lot of effort goes into this channel, a lot more than, and I'd like to think I am providing a deeper level of insight than you might get on a lot of other channels. So do help get the word out. Now, closing business, I see people are asking you, folks are wonderful. Mergut years. Let me answer the question. What is the horror homework? Oh, God, 3 people asking. Next week, we are going to be back on the regular horror anthology stuff. I am really pleased to tell you we are going to be looking at Asylum from Amicus Studios. Didn't we already cover Amicus Studios when we did Dr. Terror's House of Horrors? Yes, we did one of their early anthologies. We're going to be doing one of their later ones, partially just because I absolutely love it. So we'll look at 1972 Asylum by Amicus Studios. I think you guys are going to love it. It's really good. It's going to be a little bit of a weird one next month. I am away for a week on holiday, but we'll still get a lot covered. And I think we're probably going to end up doing 2 anthology films and then 2 specials. There's a tribute to Ray Stevenson that I want to do that I think will be quite fun. And it'll be worth covering that. And also we are going to cover Quatermass from, I want to say, it's a 1950s one. I can't remember when. I want to say 51. So it's going to be a bit of a mixed bag in June. But I hope you'll enjoy it. I might throw in a couple of random streams as well, if I can manage it.
Whiteheart asks Shrek 8 when. I'm going to answer this on your behalf. When Proper Horror Show gets to 10,000, we'll do a Shrek review.
Yeah. Get me to 10,000, gosh darn it.
Spread the word. Get people talking about Proper Horror Show and the work that she does. Get them to support what she does. Because the sooner we get to 10,000, the sooner you can get your Shrek review. I will make sure that she does it. You have my word. Go.
There we go. All right, folks. Fez, we already did Dr. Terrible's House of Horror. Oh, wait, no. I said Dr. Terrible's House of Horrors. You're talking Dr. Terrible's House of Horrible. Maybe a bonus stream. One day. All right, folks.
5,000. That's 5,000 subs.
That's the 5,000 one. You got to keep pushing. Got to keep pumping those numbers, folks. All right. That is everything. So massive thanks to Harry and TCG.
Thank you very much for having me on.
You guys are stars. And chat, thank you so much. It's been a lively one. I've enjoyed your contributions. A respectable level of filth. You kept it around the level we like, early to mid carry on rather than late carry on. And there's some good news for you folks. Hang on, where is it? Asylum 1972 is on YouTube, folks. There you go. Your horror homework got very easy. You can watch it on YouTube. I will see you next week, and I will sign off now. Thanks, y'all. Cheers.